welcome to Faith on Film, a program designed to keep you aware and informed on everything that's happening in the world of faith and family entertainment. And boy, have I got entertainment for you today. Now I'm here at the Capernaum Studios, where we are part of the Content 21 conference. And what I love about these conferences, of course, is that I get to have all kinds of people that show up that are involved in this industry. The bad part is that I don't get to do all the research and give you all the information on them ahead of time. But that's what he's going to do today. And what I have here today is a great comedian, actor, and I don't know what else you do too, but Thor Ramsey.
Hey.
We'll do the fist bump thing.
There you go. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, since I didn't get to research and kind of give them ahead of time all the wonderful things you do, you can tell us a little bit about
Well, I'll give you
yourself.
a brief synopsis. So I started stand-up comedy in 1987, made my way down to Robbie's Comedy Corner. I still remember it. So let me go back further. I'll tell you this story. I like this story. So
it's not to the fetus area.
No, not that far back.
Not that far back.
Not far back. Yeah, my mom used to recite jokes to me. My dad would read from a knock-knock joke book while I was in the womb. Yeah. So, but no, I was a junior in high school, and the girl I was dating, I think I've been married long enough I can say this now. The girl I was dating at the time came up to me, and she goes, "I dreamt you were on the Tonight Show last night." She goes, "You had a good set." And so a decade later, I went to college, did the whole, because I thought about being a stand-up in college, but the only comedy store that existed when I was in high school was the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, and I'm from Nebraska, a little town. I just didn't have the confidence to, drop
But you
everything.
said college. Now, they don't have college courses on comedy, do they?
No, in high school. In high school.
College, high school courses about comedy?
No. I was in high school.
I'm confused now.
All right, let's start over.
No. Okay, so you
my high school sweetheart.
Your high school sweetheart.
When I was a junior in high school.
Right.
Maybe I said junior in college. I meant to say junior in high school.
All I know is that you said something about college and learning comedy in college. I'm like, I didn't know they had that.
No, I don't know where that
maybe
came from.
Maybe I need to pay better attention.
But well, I went to college then, is what I say.
Okay.
So after high school, she tells me this when I'm a junior. I go to college, I do that whole thing, I get a job, I'm in an industry, I hate it, and at that point I figure, if you're not going to follow your own dreams, you might as well follow somebody else's. So I found my way to a comedy club and entered a contest and won the first round. Within a year, I was working 42 weeks a year as a stand-up comedian. And that was 1987, doing clubs around the country.
Oh my goodness.
So I did that for, so however many years ago that was. I still do stand-up occasionally. I don't do it full time anymore, but so I started as a stand-up. Long story short, then got married, and marriage will, if you're not walking with Christ when you get married, you'll be walking with Christ soon after. So I got married, and we both, recommitted our lives to Christ, and then I started working for Chuck Colson's Prison Fellowship, doing events in prisons, and then I didn't even know there was what you'd call a Christian market at that point. I didn't even know it existed.
Especially for comedy.
Yeah, especially for comedy. And there was the Christian market it's always been a smaller market, but you had Mike Warnke was the only guy I'd ever heard of. And I'd seen Mike in concert a few times, and then there was Shonda Pierce.
And
Mark Lowry.
Isaac Airfreight too, or was that even way before?
Isaac Airfreight was before, they were about this little after Mike Warnke, but they never were. Mike Warnke was filling. He'd show up in a city and he could pack out 2,000 or 3,000 people. That's when you have a following. Yep. And the Shonda Pierce could do that. Mark Lowry could do that. But those were that was pretty much it in the Christian. There was really only room for one, but there wasn't a lot at that time. So anyway, started doing some Christian events, and then I always wanted. I like to write, so I wanted to be a writer, and long story short, this is what I'm doing now, but that's kind of the background piece. So I did stand-up for years and years and years, and stand-up in the Christian market.
Do you find that difficult because comedy in general, Christian, let's call it Christian comedy at this point, because comedy just by nature can be, irreverent a little bit. So
comedy's based on criticism, really.
Yeah,
and really what it is.
And Christians don't like to be criticized.
Well, that's then they're not reading the same Bible I am. But if you look at it's like, I think my friend Darren Strebel pointed this out years ago, but he said comedy is really just commentary on the sin nature of man. If we weren't sinners, there'd be nothing. It's not taking yourself so seriously. So there's an element of humility in comedy, and But I found transitioning from clubs to churches was like going from, well, the audiences at churches were like playing theaters. Because in a club, you've got waitresses walking around, you got a blender in the back, you know, you got inebriated people, that's drunk, and so there's just a lot of different things that you're fighting different things in that environment to be funny.
No drunk people in church?
No drunk people in church that I know of. Now you probably have, that at least they don't get drunk there. You got to be drunk before you come.
Okay.
That's the whole thing about church. So you got to hide it too. So, but they were really more. It was like playing a theater because you would pause. You know, it's called the pregnant pause. You pause.
Right.
But you pause in a club. Well, the thing about club comedy, you don't generally pause in club comedy. You just boom, bop, boom, bop, laughter, move on. Because if you pause there, you're like, you crash, you know, it's like there's stuff going on. So, but in the church environment, it was just, and then Christian audiences were really encouraging. So the danger is in the Christian market, like you're entertaining a bunch of drunks, you know, for them. And I don't want to make clubs sound like everyone there is just plastered. That's not the case. But when you have that many distractions, you know,
mean like coughing?
Yeah, like coughing.
Okay.
Yeah. If that's our audience. If something's working, you know it works.
Yeah.
And then you take that. If it's a 3 in that environment on a scale of 1 to 5, because I used to grade my jokes. You know, 1 to 5. You want some 3s or like, okay, but then you want 4s and 5s. And so if it's a 3 in that environment, you bring it over here and it could be a 4 or 5. Just because the audience, their attention, they're just, but they're so encouraging. So the problem is, as you develop material sometimes over here, the material may not be as strong as you think it is if you take it back to this environment. You know, so it's just those dynamics. But there's an old saying in comedies, like dying is easy, comedy's hard. So that's kind of the old saying. So, you know.
Well, listen, at some point you also transitioned into acting, I believe, right?
Yeah, so...
Well, hold on now. We're going to take a little break.
Okay.
And when we come back, you're going to tell us all about that.
All right.
All right. Folks, don't go away. We'll be right back.
This is Holly on Hollywood.
Hi, I'm Holly McClure with a Holly on Hollywood movie review. Let's take a look.
Uncle Casey, can't he just stay for one night?
One night.
Clifford the Big Red Dog is a delightful family film based on the popular children's book series. Emily, played by Darby Camp, is a middle schooler who has trouble making friends. She feels all alone until she's given a red puppy to love and care for. She makes a wish and wakes up to see a 10-foot supersized Clifford. With her mother away on business, Emily and her Uncle Casey, Jack Whitehall, take Clifford to see a vet to make him small again. But soon their trip turns into a wild day in New York. Clifford makes the news, a genetics company tries to steal him, and it's up to Emily and her uncle to save Clifford. John Cleese and Tony Hill also star. The PG is for mild bathroom humor when Clifford goes potty, and a few weird scenes like Clifford accidentally eating a small dog then spitting him out, or a bizarre two-headed goat is created at the genetics company. Clifford's a story full of adventure, funny dialogue, chase scenes. Clifford plays fetch with a kid inside a bumper ball. Emily drives a getaway truck, and my favorite scene, Emily galloping through the streets of New York City on the back of Clifford. Camp is perfectly cast as Emily, and Cleese is always a delight. There are lessons about the power of love, believing in yourself, and being unique. With more than 50 Clifford books since 1963, old and young will enjoy Clifford the Big Red Dog.
Full of love.
Ah! He's slipping!
Made you feel like you could do anything.
Your dog just saved my life!
I'm getting Clifford out of here. You know how to drive? How hard can it be? I'm grounded for life, aren't I?
You and me both.
He eats like an animal.
He is an animal.
I'm talking about him.
Whoa.
Remember to choose your movies wisely.
Welcome back to to Faith on Film, coming to you from Capernaum Studios today. And I am here with Thor Ramsey, who just has me cracking up through all this thing. I don't know how I'm going to get through this show. But so we were talking about, of course, your comedy career.
Yep.
But then at some point, you decided that wasn't enough, apparently, and you decided to become an actor.
You know, it was always kind of in the back of my mind, because stand-up is like the lowest rung into showbiz. It really is. So it's like...
Is it sort of like podcast is the lowest rung in the television career?
The talk show circuit, I guess. I don't know. But stand-up is that way, that, it's like you could get your... So at the time, when I was young, I thought, well, I'll start stand-up and then I'll write screenplays and other things because I'll have free time. Well, you don't realize, stand-up, comedy's hard, so it requires a lot of work. So I spent just years just trying to learn how to be funny, because there's that whole idea, when you're not a stand-up, people always tell you should be a comedian.
Right.
And then once you become a stand-up, no one ever says that to you. And I thought, wow, that's really odd. But what I found is that whatever need you have to make people laugh, when you're not a stand-up, that need is met in interpersonal communication with people. So you're always on and being funny. But once you're a stand-up, that needs, you meet that need every night when you perform. So in your daily life, you don't need to be as funny anymore. So people really stop telling you need to be a comedian. Once you're a comedian, no one tells you need to be one. But anyway, so I really wanted to write screenplays and different things like that, and novels. And so I started writing a screenplay about 2010 called Youth Group. It was just a slice of life comedy about a youth pastor in crisis, and I wanted it to be a comedy. Not necessarily screwball comedy, but I wanted to, it was really, I wanted it to have a feel like an independent feature film. And I was really looking for a small budget to make this film. Well, so my manager at the time gets me a meeting with Sonia Firm, and I'm pitching him and I had two, I still think they're solid ideas that can be made, but they were just mainstream, comedies is really what they were. They weren't faith-based. They were just comedies. They just happened to be clean for the mainstream. And I thought, these are great ideas. I mean, these are big concept ideas. I'm sure they'll buy it on one. But they're like, it's Sonia Firm. We're about faith. Do you have a faith-based, thing? I'm like, oh yeah. Did I prepare for this meeting at all? And so I only had about 30 pages. I didn't tell them that, but I go, I got this other idea called Youth Group, blah blah blah. And they're like, we'd love to see that. So I, well, give me a week, because my computer's in the shop, which it was. But I'm like, I didn't want to tell them. They're like, I need a week to write it. So I go home and I write the screenplay, basically, finish it that week, and send it off to Sony. And there's a guy, he's still there. His name is Josh Nadler. He's a great guy. Josh calls me up, gives me notes over the phone. And I don't know if this is standard practice or not, but he did this 5 times. That's why I always mention his name, because I'm going, it was really, filmmaking, unlike stand-up, is a community endeavor. You're really making it with a group of people, so it's never just one person's final vision. It's a group endeavor, and that's why they always say it's amazing when anything, because it's like having too many cooks in the kitchen in one sense. If you can make a great meal with that many cooks in the kitchen, something special happened. And so he walks me through 5 rewrites, and at the very last meeting we had on the phone, he says, what your story needs right now is a big idea to bring all the characters together. I'm like, well, okay, I'll keep my nose out or my ears open for a big idea. Whatever. I don't know if it's going to come through my nose or my ears. I don't know. What's the big idea? I don't know. But I've just had my antennas up for a big idea. Well, a friend of mine, my best friend at the time, was a church planter, and he calls me up. He goes, you're not going to believe what this major mega church that we all know is doing. I go, what are they doing? He goes, they're crucifying someone on Good Friday. I'm like, there's no way. He goes, I'm on the social media page right now. Like, let me check it out. So I get on social media, and I check it out, and what happens, they weren't actually crucifying someone, but they were doing a passion play, but it was going to be so realistic that they had all these warnings. It's like if you're squeamish or you faint at the sight of blood, that kind of thing. So it seemed like they were literally crucifying someone. But right then I realized that so many American evangelical pastors has done such crazy things with all the best of intentions to draw people to church, that for a moment my friend and I believed that an American evangelical church would actually crucify someone on a Good Friday to draw people to church. And right then I knew I had my idea. That was the big idea. And so the script, all the 30 rewrites, all the different versions of the script, that was the central idea throughout. And so it's really just Became Church People, the movie.
Okay. And so Sony Affirm handed you this huge check.
No, they never ended up. They didn't. They're not the ones who ended up releasing it. Oddly enough. So long story, but there's a whole story there too. But thanks to Josh Nadler and then my friend calling me up, it's like even that was the community aspect of how the creative process works. And then Christopher Sean Shaw. Then I started. He's the director of the film, and I started looking then for filmmakers to work with because I just wanted to get it made. And I was thinking, give us 25 grand, we can get this script made, was what I was thinking. So I got involved with a thing called the 168 Film Festival.
I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, so it's basically a speed filmmaking competition, and I saw this guy online who was making videos of his goldfish. So I knew, number one, he's single. I know that. Number two, he's lonely. So he's got plenty of time, and the goldfish. He filmed the goldfish pretty good. Like the goldfish looked pretty good. So I contacted him, and it was Christopher, and he's like, "Well, we're doing a 168 next week. You want to be involved?" And so I got involved in that. Wanted to start networking with filmmakers, and then after that 168 film we shot, which was very well received, called Skip Listening.
I remember the film.
Yeah, so I actually have a feature-length script for that now that we're trying to get funded. But Christopher and I took several scenes from the script, and we shot what we call a proof of concept trailer. So we shot a trailer for Church People, and then blasted it on social media. Stephen Baldwin saw it, loved it, contacted us. We had a phone meeting, then we had live meetings, and he's like, I'm going to get this thing funded. And I give him all the credit. 2 years later, took him 2 years, he found funding for that film. And so we ended up, what I wanted to just, give us $25,000. Like, he turned out to be like about a $1.7 million budget.
Wow.
That's
a big jump.
Well, for Christian films, that's like, it's still a small budget.
Right.
But, in Hollywood, I think a $5 million is a low budget
It's a low
film.
budget.
So we were 1.7, so we're still low budget compared to
But
Hollywood.
in Christian films, 25,000 is a regular budget.
Yeah, it's fine. We got it made, and it's been really well received.
Wow.
So that's the short version of what's happened there, and it just came out on digital and DVD September 3rd. I don't know when this will air, but it's available on all the digital platforms and DVD.
Well, I'll tell you what, normally I'm doing 2 segments now, and then on the 3rd segment I have Holly McClure give us an update on Hollywood films. But this is too much fun, so let's do a 3rd segment. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
You're good?
Absolutely.
You don't have somewhere to go right now?
No, I got nowhere to be except to this conference.
Folks, he's got nowhere to be, so he'll be right back here in another couple of minutes, all right?
This is Holly on Hollywood.
Hi, I'm Holly McClure with a Holly on Hollywood movie review. Let's take a look.
Welcome back to Faith on Film. Again, I just couldn't cut this at two segments here. So we're here with Thor Ramsey right now, and Thor, we've learned all about your wife a little bit and your comedy career. Does anybody ever come to you and say, "Oh, you're a comedian? Be funny. Say something funny."
Once in a while, people would do that. You're a comedian. You get this. You're a comedian. Say something funny.
Yes.
And the standard line used to be, "I like your shirt." That was there was a standard line you just have when people would say that to you, or like, "What kind of comedy do you do?" The funny kind.
It's a good thing you're not a plumber. Can you imagine? Can you fix my toilet?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So you then moved into film. You've got this film coming out. Yeah. I'm sure there's some.
I got to act in it too.
Really?
Yeah. So that's thanks to Stephen Baldwin, because I played the lead in the trailer, and the guy who played Pastor Skip in the trailer ended up. He's a great actor, Michael Monks, and he ended up playing Pastor Skip in the film too. Because Stephen Baldwin was, let's try to keep as much as we can that made that trailer successful in the actual film itself.
Right. And
that was a great strategy, and that's why I got the role. And it's probably why we had such a hard time finding a distribution deal too. Who's this guy? Thor Ramsey. What? You're basing he's the lead? Who else you got in it?
Yeah, but
Stephen Baldwin's in it.
Isn't Thor a superhero?
He's a superhero, but
how much better can you get?
There you go.
Now, so is that what you want to do now? Do you still want to do comedy, or do you want to more transition now into acting?
No, I'm writing screenplays, and then you're writing every screenplay you write, you want to be in the film in some sense. So you're writing screen. So I've got 10 completed scripts, and then we've got about 3 right now, or 4. Maybe there's 4 right now. We're in process of finishing. So I've got 4 other projects, film projects, and so we're just trying to write these scripts.
Are they all comedy?
They're all comedies.
Really?
Well, it's kind of like this. I took this advice once you do something, if it's successful, people want more of that. You know, if you do a comedy, then people go, hey, you got any more comedy? You don't want to come like, well, I've got this family drama. Like, when you did the comedy, like, well, I've got this family drama. You see where I'm saying it? The way I'm saying it's family drama.
Yes.
So just like that. But so you got to do, and, focus on what you're good at. Focus. It's almost like that's kind of what we learn a little bit from the successful fast food chains. If you try to increase your menu too much, it's people don't know what to order, and they don't
that's
like.
True. That's what I love
if you're
about
known
In-N-Out.
for your In-N-Out hamburgers, keep doing that. Make good fries. Don't change your recipe, McDonald's. And so I'm focusing on. They're all comedies, and they're all faith-based, because Christian films are a genre of film. And this is my argument with some of my friends. Like, I have a friend who would say, well, Up, you could classify Up as a Christian film. The Pixar movie. I go, you can't. It might have some Christian principles in it, and I think any good filmmaking that deals with reality has some Christian principles, because you can only live inside of God's reality. Here's the thing: there's reality, the way God created it, and that's the only choice you have. That you can only live in that reality. Now you can try to deny the reality, but you can't really live outside of it. And so all films that have good characters or themes of redemption are because of the truth that God is, because of how the world works. But Christian films are a genre. Yeah. And when you write a genre of film, they have to hit certain beats. And you've got to have, there has to be a faith element in those films, and it has to be, based upon the Judeo-Christian faith. That's what makes a Christian film. Christians want to see themselves represented in some way in the film. Now, I think we've come a long way even in the last decade in Christian filmmaking. I think we have a long way to go, but I think we've made great strides. Because I think they're starting to learn, I think as filmmakers now, we're starting to learn, don't begin a film with, here's my message, how can I put it in a film?
And that's the problem with Christian
That's
films.
the problem.
Is they're technically a pulpit message.
Yes,
in a
and
film.
and no one likes, even some secular films are like that. And we call that propaganda. They're shoving a point of view down our throats, and we resent it. Yes. So why do we think as Christians they're not going to resent that if we do the same thing? So my thing is, start with a story. Is there a story you're passionate about? Is there a story that excites you? Because if you're excited about it, if you're not gripped by it, no one else will be. So find a story that you find interesting and work on the story. And if you're a Christian, your worldview will emerge. And then you can see how to highlight it some way. But it doesn't, I don't, God has already ordained a vehicle to spread the gospel, and that is through the preaching of the word. Now, whether we do that from a pulpit or a one-to-one or through broadcast television, it's still the same ordained means, which is preaching of the word. And that's how. So, film is not that. That's why it's like, as well produced as they were. Billy Graham's organization made films for a while there, back in the late 80s, was it 70s and 80s maybe? There were 70s and 90s, but I don't know how many films they made. They made
they made a few.
They made
certainly over 10.
Okay, all right.
Certainly over 10.
But they all kind of had the same pattern and ended up in the same place.
They did.
And so there was never going to be a surprise ending.
Yeah, it always ended with Billy Graham doing a message.
They're going, they're going to the
crusade.
They're going to the crusade, and the apocalypse occurs. Now there's a surprise ending, but they never went that way.
True.
So after a while, it's formulaic, but formula is just following genre in one sense. But the creativity, start with a story, tell the story. The Christian view will emerge.
So, Thor, if somebody wants to follow you and keep up with everything you're doing, where do they go?
You can go to thorramsey.com.
Okay.
I don't know why you do that, but you can go there. thorramsey.com, and I think there's contact information there. But
all right. You want to give your address or your phone number or your bank account or anything like that?
You can email. I'm pretty available, so I'll give you my phone number if you want.
The website will be fine. They can follow you there and keep up with everything you're doing. Well, thanks, man, for taking the time. I know that you're at this conference, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of things for you to do, but I figured I'd catch you before you even got started.
Appreciate that.